I never thought I'd end up here, honestly. My name's Jake, and I was with Emily for about 5 years before we were supposed to get married. Things weren't perfect, but I thought they were good enough. She was always a bit bitchy, quick to get defensive, and she loved to lie her ass off about little things. Still, I never suspected she'd do something as fucked up as cheat on me right before our wedding. We'd been planning this big celebration, family, friends, the whole 9 yards. I was nervous, sure, but I trusted her. I mean, she convinced me she was all in. But there were signs, small ones at first. She started being more secretive with her phone, hiding her screen when I'd walk into the room. She'd leave her messages open sometimes, and I'd catch glimpses of flirtatious stuff that made me uncomfortable. Nothing concrete, just enough to start feeling uneasy. I told myself I was paranoid, that I was overthinking, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then one night, I came home a little earlier than usual from work. I'd been swamped with a project and was looking forward to just relaxing. As I unlocked the door, I noticed her car wasn't in the driveway. That wasn't unusual. She sometimes went out with her friends or to her mom's. But what was strange was her phone was left on the kitchen counter, face up and unlocked. Normally, she'd keep it hidden or turn the screen away. Curiosity got the better of me, so I glanced at it. There were messages, not just casual chit-chat, but flirty, suggestive messages from her best man, Mark. They were talking about meeting up, about secrets, and about how much they missed each other. My stomach dropped. Mark was her childhood friend, a guy I'd met a few times. I never really liked him, but I trusted Emily. To see this stuff now, clear as day, it was like a punch to the gut. I knew I needed to dig deeper. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I started snooping around her social media. That's when I found the photos. Hidden in a private album, her and Mark sleeping together in my bed. Yeah, in my bed. They'd snuck in late at night and there they were, tangled up. Eyes closed with her hand resting on his chest. It was like some sick betrayal, right in the place I considered our shared space. I felt like I'd been punched again, harder this time. How could she do this? How could she lie so easily about it? It was like she thought she could just go on pretending everything was fine. I couldn't believe it. I wanted to scream, cry, punch something. But I kept my cool for a while, just staring at those pictures, trying to process what I'd just seen. It felt like betrayal on every level, emotionally, physically, and morally. All the signs were there, but I refused to see them clearly. Now that I had the evidence, I couldn't ignore it anymore. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I loved, was sleeping with my best man, right under my nose. That's when I knew I had to confront her, but I wasn't ready yet. I just wanted to gather my thoughts. I had no idea what was coming next, but I knew one thing: my life was about to change forever. I stayed up all night that night, staring at those pictures and trying figure out what I was supposed to do. I felt sick, like I'd been punched again and again in the stomach. The worst part was the betrayal wasn't just about the sex. It was about the lying, the sneaking around, the fact that my best man, my supposed friend, had been sleeping with my wife in my bed. That's something I never thought I'd have to face. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I could have been so blind. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I couldn't just pretend this wasn't happening. I needed to confront Emily, but I also knew I had to be smart about it. I didn't want her to spin some bullshit story or deny everything. I wanted her to admit it outright. So I waited until she came back home, knowing she'd be at her worst. When she finally got in, I was sitting on the couch, calm but furious. She looked surprised, like she hadn't expected me to be awake, or worse, that I'd find out. Her eyes darted around, trying to read me. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a reaction right away. I just looked at her and said, "We need to talk." Her face twisted into that bitchy smirk she always had when she thought she was in control. She tried to brush it off, say I was overreacting, that I was paranoid, that she had no idea what I was talking about. That's when I laid the evidence on the table. I showed her the messages, the pictures, the private album. Her face went white, but she quickly recovered, trying to act like she was innocent. "Oh, come on, Jake," she said, scoffing. "You know how guys like Mark are. He's just trying to mess around, and maybe I was drunk and stupid. It doesn't mean anything." She brushed it off, but I could see the flicker of guilt in her eyes. That was enough for me. I told her I wasn't interested in her excuses. I told her I saw enough. She got defensive fast, started calling me crazy, saying I was insecure, that I was imagining things. She started throwing around words like overreacting, paranoid, and jealous. She looked at me like I was the one who was out of line, like she hadn't done anything wrong. That's the kind of bitchy attitude she always had. She'd lie, deny, and then accuse me of being the problem. But I knew better now. I knew I wasn't crazy. I knew she had been lying to my face for months. The worst part, she tried to turn it around on me. "You never spend enough time with me," she said, sneering. "Maybe if you were more attentive, I wouldn't have needed to find comfort somewhere else." That was her favorite line, like I was the one at fault. Like I'd been neglecting her. I just stared at her and said, "You slept with my best man, Emily, in my bed. That's not neglect, that's betrayal." She shrugged, trying to act like she didn't care, but I saw the flicker of guilt again. She was caught and she knew it. Honestly, I felt so many things at once. Anger, sadness, disgust. I'd trusted her. I'd loved her. And she threw it all away for some quick sex with Mark. I thought about all those nights I stayed up worrying about her, wondering if she was okay. Turns out she was just using to keep up appearances while she was secretly sleeping around. That realization hit me hard. I wanted to rip her apart right there, but I held back. I knew I needed to think clearly now. I needed to decide what to do next, and I knew that whatever I chose, my life would never be the same. After the initial confrontation, I felt like I was walking around in a daze. Part of me wanted to break everything in sight, to scream, to yell, to cry. But another part knew I had to keep my cool. I couldn't let her see that she'd broken me completely, not yet. Still, it was damn hard to hold back the flood of emotions. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her and Mark sleeping in my bed. The betrayal felt like a punch straight to my chest every single time. Emily, of course, kept trying to deny everything. She was a master at spinning stories. She told me she was curious, that Mark was just a bad influence, that she didn't even remember how it started. She insisted it was a mistake, a one-time thing, and that she loved me. She told me I was overreacting, that I was just being paranoid because I didn't want to believe she could do something so horrible. That it doesn't mean anything, she said, and that I should forget about it, but I wasn't stupid. I knew her well enough to see the lie in her eyes. I kept my distance after that. I didn't want to get into a shouting match or beg her to stay. I just needed time to process. I started packing a bag, figuring I'd stay somewhere else for a bit. I wasn't sure if I should confront Mark, or if I should just cut my losses. Every time I tried to think logically, I'd get hit with a wave of anger again. How could my best man, my supposed friend, do this to me? How could Emily, someone I trusted, sleep with him right in my own bed? That's the kind of betrayal that shakes your whole sense of reality. The days that followed were filled with awkward silence and tense conversations. Emily insisted she was sorry, that she didn't mean for it to happen, that she was confused and weak. She kept crying, trying to guilt-trip me into forgiving her, acting like I was the one in the wrong for not trusting her. She even said she'd end things with Mark, that she'd fix everything. But I didn't believe her, not anymore. Once trust is broken, it's hard to repair, especially when it's broken in such a brutal way. I started thinking about what I really wanted. Part of me wanted to forget the whole thing, to sweep it under the rug and pretend it never happened. But I knew I couldn't do that. Not after seeing her with Mark, not after hearing all her lies. I felt so hurt, so betrayed, I started questioning everything. Had I been blind all this time? Was she really just a bitchy girl who liked to lie and cheat? Or was I just too naive to see what was happening right in front of me? I remember sitting in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I let things get so out of control. I felt like I'd been played for a fool. I kept thinking about all those nights I stayed up worrying about her, thinking she was just busy or tired. Meanwhile, she was out sleeping with my best man. It was like some sick joke at my expense. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I wanted to call her, yell at her, tell her exactly how much she'd hurt me. But I knew I needed to think longer to decide whether I was going to try to fix this or cut her out of my life entirely. What I did know is this: trust was gone. That betrayal changed everything. And no matter what I chose next, I'd never see Emily the same way again. The woman I loved, the woman I was planning to marry, she'd become just another chapter in the story of how I got played. And honestly, I didn't know if I was more angry at her or at myself for ever trusting her in the first place. The days dragged on, and I found myself oscillating between absolute fury and deep despair. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, so naive. Every time I thought about confronting her again, a wave of rage would hit me, but then guilt and sadness would follow. I kept replaying everything in my head, all the signs. I ignored the late nights she claimed were work, the secret texts, the subtle but growing distance between us. It was like I was living someone else's nightmare, and I was the only one who knew the truth. One evening, Emily showed up at my door unexpectedly. She looked different, her eyes were red, her makeup smudged, and she had that bitchy, sneering attitude she always used when she was trying to manipulate. She had the nerve to act like she was the victim. She started with the usual bullshit, saying she was sorry, that she didn't know what came over her, that she loved me too much to lose me. She begged me in her own annoying, manipulative way to forgive her, to work things out. She said she'd end things with Mark, that she'd go to therapy, that she'd do whatever it took. I looked at her and felt nothing but disgust. I told her I didn't believe her anymore. I told her she was a liar and a cheat, that she'd betrayed me in the worst way possible. I told her I was done trying to fix something that was already broken beyond repair. Her face twisted with anger and frustration, and she started yelling, calling me controlling, paranoid, and insecure. She told me I was overreacting, that I was making a mountain out of a molehill, but I knew better. I knew she had been sleeping with Mark, hiding it behind her bitchy lies. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat on my bed, staring at the ceiling, trying not to cry. I kept thinking about all the plans we made, all the dreams we shared, and how easily she threw them away for some quick sex with my best man. I wondered how someone could be so selfish, so manipulative. I wondered if I'd ever be able to trust again, or if I was doomed to just walk around with this knot in my stomach forever. The hardest part was realizing that I was alone in this. I had nobody I could really turn to, no trusted friends or family who knew the full story. Everyone just thought Emily was perfect, the sweetest girl, and I was the one who was overreacting. But I knew the truth. I knew what I saw, what I felt, and what I couldn't unsee. That betrayal wasn't just a mistake. It was a slap in the face, a punch to the dignity I'd worked so hard to build. So I made a decision. I knew I couldn't keep going back and forth like this. I had to face the fact that she was done, that she didn't respect me enough to be honest. I also knew I had to protect myself emotionally, whether that meant walking away for good or figuring out how to rebuild my life from the wreckage. I didn't have all the answers yet, but I understood one thing clearly. I was done being a fool. I was done pretending everything was okay. The trust was shattered, and I had to find a way to live with that. After that night, I knew I had to make a move. Staying in that situation was unbearable. I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know the truth or that I was okay with her lying and sneaking around. I started by packing up some of my things, not just to physically distance myself, but to mentally prepare for whatever came next. I didn't tell her I was leaving right away. I wanted to do it on my terms when I was ready. The first thing I did was reach out to a couple of my close friends, guys I trusted, and just laid out everything. I needed someone to talk to, even if I was still furious and hurt. They listened without judgment, told me I deserved better, and advised me to think carefully about what I really wanted. I realized I was at a crossroads. I could try to salvage the relationship, or I could cut my losses and walk away. Honestly, the second option seemed like the only sane choice, but part of me still felt torn. Eventually, I decided I needed to confront Emily one last time. I called her, told her I was coming over and that I wanted to talk face to face. When she opened the door, she looked surprised but quickly masked it with that bitchy smirk again. I was done playing her game. I told her I knew everything about her messaging Mark, about sleeping in my bed, about lying to my face. I told her I was done believing her bullshit and that I was leaving for good. Her reaction was a mixture of anger and denial. She tried to make me feel guilty, telling me I was overreacting, that I was crazy for thinking she'd do something so disgusting. She said she loved me, that she was just weak, that she was sorry, and that she never meant to hurt me. But I wasn't buying it. I looked her in the eyes and told her I'd never trust her again, that she'd destroyed everything we had built. I told her she was a bitch for sleeping with my best man in our bed and that I deserved better than to be lied to and betrayed like that. That was the moment I knew I couldn't stay. I told her I was leaving and that I'd never come back. She tried to grab me to stop me, but I pushed past her and walked out that door for good. The feeling was a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I'd finally done it. I was free from the lies, the manipulation, the betrayal. In the days that followed, I felt a roller coaster of emotions. There was anger, of course, but also sadness and regret. I kept thinking about how I'd trusted her and how she'd used that trust to cheat and lie. But I also knew I was better off alone than in a relationship built on lies. Slowly, I started to rebuild my life. I focused on my work, my friends, and my mental health. I blocked her on everything, no social media, no texts, no contact, because I knew staying connected would just keep me in that toxic cycle. Looking back, I realized what an eye-opener this whole experience was. I learned that trust is fragile, and once broken, it's almost impossible to fix. I also learned that some people just aren't worth your time or energy, no matter how much you love them. The biggest lesson: never ignore the signs and always listen to your instincts. If someone shows you they're capable of betrayal, believe it and walk away. Because no matter how much you want things to work out, some betrayals cut too deep to ever truly recover from. Now, sitting here reflecting on everything, I realize that this whole ordeal was one of the toughest experiences I've ever gone through, but it also taught me a lot about myself. I used to think I was someone who could handle anything, who could forgive and forget for the sake of love. Turns out I'm not that guy. Not when I've been completely betrayed in the worst way possible. Trust, once shattered, leaves a scar that doesn't really heal. It just becomes a reminder of how fragile everything can be. I've learned to be more cautious, more discerning about who I let into my life, and about the signs I might have overlooked. I've also come to accept that sometimes love isn't enough. No matter how much you care for someone, if they're willing to cheat and lie, they don't deserve a second chance. That realization was bitter but necessary. Most importantly, I've learned that revenge isn't always about doing something destructive. It's about reclaiming your sense of self and dignity. I didn't ruin Emily's life. I simply took back mine. I stopped letting her manipulate and control me, and I prioritized my own mental health. I found strength in walking away and leaving her behind, knowing I had done everything I could and that I deserved better. To anyone out there dealing with something similar, I'll say this: trust your instincts. Don't ignore the little signs because you're afraid of losing someone. When you find evidence of betrayal, face it head on, don't justify or minimize it. And most of all, remember that your happiness and self-respect come first. If someone truly cares about you, they won't need to cheat or lie to keep you around. It's hard, and it hurts like hell, but in the end, you're better off alone than in a relationship built on lies. Trust me, once you go through it, you'll never see love the same way, but you'll also see your strength in a new light.